You know the comparison is irrational. You know their highlight reel is not their real life. You know that measuring yourself against someone else's external markers is a fundamentally broken instrument for self-assessment. You know all of this. And you keep doing it. This is worth understanding carefully, because the problem is not ignorance. People who compare themselves to others constantly are usually quite aware that the comparison is unfair. The awareness does not stop the impulse. Which means the impulse is not primarily a cognitive error, it is an emotional one. And emotional patterns require something different than information to change. Research on social comparison theory, originally developed by Leon Festinger in the 1950s, establishes that human beings have a basic drive to evaluate their own opinions and abilities, and that in the absence of objective standards, we evaluate them by comparison to others. This is built in. It is not a personality flaw. It is how the brain calibrates its understanding of where it stands. The problem is not comparison itself. The problem is the specific way comparison gets used, not to calibrate accurately but to generate inadequacy. The mind does not compare itself to the person who is more anxious, less accomplished, more confused. It compares itself to the person who seems to have what it wants. And it compares the internal reality, every doubt, every failure, every private struggle, to the external presentation of someone else's life. This is not a fair comparison. It is structurally impossible for it to be fair. But the mind does not generate inadequacy because the comparison is fair. It generates inadequacy because inadequacy is familiar and somehow necessary to the psychological structure of the person running the comparison. The Lubavitcher Rebbe understood this at a spiritual level. He taught that every soul is utterly unique, not as inspiration but as ontological fact. The soul that came into the world as you is not a variation on any other soul. It has a specific mission, a specific capacity, a specific combination of inner resources that is unrepeatable. To compare it to another soul is to measure something that has no equivalent. He said something practical that follows from this: you can only be evaluated against what you were capable of, not against what someone else accomplished. The question is not whether you did as well as another person, it is whether you did as much as you were capable of. That is the only meaningful standard. This is more demanding than it sounds, because it requires taking your own capacity seriously. The person who is comparing themselves to others is often using the comparison as an escape from a more uncomfortable question: what are you actually capable of, and are you doing it? The comparison to others provides cover for not answering that question. If the standard is someone else's achievement, you can always explain your shortfall by differences in privilege, luck, circumstance, timing. But if the standard is your own capacity, you have to sit with the harder truth. There is a practical reorientation the Rebbe consistently offered: instead of asking how you compare to others, ask how you compare to who you were. Not whether you are where someone else is, but whether you are further along than you were a year ago, a month ago, a week ago. This is a comparison that can be made fairly because the two data points are both yours. Research on self-compassion and growth mindset consistently shows that this shift, from social comparison to personal progress measurement, produces significantly better outcomes for motivation, persistence, and well-being. It is not just more comfortable. It is more effective. The question to sit with is this: if you removed every other person from your awareness, if there were no one to compare yourself to, no external benchmark at all, what would you want? What would you pursue? What would you be proud of? That answer, uncontaminated by comparison, is the most reliable guide to what your specific path is. You are not behind anyone. You are on a path that is only yours. And the only meaningful question is whether you are walking it.